Gonna be fun. You know, we were doing some talking behind the scenes when that little red ticker, the live, was off, and we were talking about a million topics. But more than anything, I think we were laughing and having fun, and I think that's going to be the kind of the vibe of today's episode. You know, I asked the two gentlemen in front of me. I know you guys know these guys, so I'm not going to make this long introduction. But I said, is there anything you want us to cover, and is there anything you want us to stay away from? And they said, no, let's just make some good content. And it's funny, we're recording this, it's September 1st, you're listening to it, new month, September, and we feel like National was like last year. We were just talking about that. So much has happened in this last month, and we'll talk about Card Ladder, we'll talk about Chris Hodge and Josh and what they're up to, but first, let's talk about August. Let's talk about all the things that have happened and get your guys' takes on the hobby, and really maybe shed some optimism and positivity on what it looks like moving forward. So without further ado, you guys know these guys. Josh, Cardboard Chronicles, one of the best LeBron collections in the game. If we have time, I'll let I'll let Josh come at me for my LeBron comment. Chris Hodge.
He called you LeBron. He actually referred to you as LeBron. I like it. That means we have to call Christian McCaffrey.
Yes.
We have to use their real names then.
I'll go with Jordan too, but I'll settle.
Welcome to the show officially.
When are you launching the House of McCaffreys?
That's going to be a very small house. That's the shack of McCaffreys.
Yeah, it sort of rhymes. I like it. Well, listen, we're going to talk about the National. It's funny. Andrew gives a great intro, and he says, he left one part out. We did ask these guys, is there anything off limits? And they said no, and give them credit for that. But we did say, hey, is there anything you want us to focus on? And before we leave, we'll talk about the National, but we have to give Josh just 5 minutes to talk about his OnlyFans account. Because he did say we got to mention that. We have to talk about that, guys. But no, back to August, the National. Back to the National. So August, it feels like it's forever. Go ahead.
You know how I would describe August? I would describe it as a swig of a Cage 2-liter.
Yeah,
that's what August was. And I do consume Luka's Tigers and Bronze, and I know all about those 2-liter. I know Andrew's push to get you off of them, but no success there whatsoever.
Got to be caffeinated, man. I'd put myself to sleep if I wasn't for this stuff. So I got to keep myself going, man. I mean, that's how this works. But, I mean, listen, I think I get what you're saying. I mean, we were kind of coming into it with like, it was a little bit of a doldrum, right? And then there was a little bit of a pump. It seemed a little bit of momentum going into it. And, I mean, I look at the Card Ladder, the Card Ladder Index. And I saw your post from today, and it basically says cards are picking back up, guys. I mean, and that's a great thing to see, right? Because that's an overall market index. Right. And, we see it just in our listener count, kind of matches sort of, the market in and of itself. Right. So what do you think led to that? You think it was the National? You think it was just, overreaction or correction? What do you guys think? Because you guys are in the weeds on the data. So talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, Josh made the post pointing out that the CL index, as of today, it's up 5%. And so the 50 cards comprising it are at a roughly $1 million valuation. So, and it hasn't been there for a while. So, Josh, what made you, notice that the CL index is up 5% over the last month and kind of put a spotlight on it?
Well, I mean, over the last like 2 weeks leading up to National, a lot of people were trying to almost forcefully will the market to go back up because they were just tired of seeing it go down so much. So they're willing it, look at this sale, look at this all-time high. The market's going back up. I know it. But if you look at the index, which is the actual way that we like to track internally how the overall market's doing, the numbers were saying it was down. So, I didn't want to be the one that's saying the opposite. But in the last couple of weeks, I think maybe people just got tired of trying to will it up, and it's been a little bit quiet. And it's okay, let me check now that everyone's quiet and see if it actually is going back up. I've always preferred to go against the grain. And so now that it's quiet, now I will announce, yes, so that market is going back up. You guys can be excited again.
Is it going up across the board? So, to me, what I've seen, and sorry to cut you off, Cage.
No, go ahead. I'll remember my question.
I think 2021, we saw GOATs, Brady, Jordan, Kobe, just all-time Hall of Famers, and all the way down the road, just go through the roof. But we saw Modern actually sell off. Is that trend reversing?
Well, the index is mostly older stuff. I think the newest card we have in there is 2017. So 2013, I think it's one of those. So it would be hard for the index to actually gauge that specific question. But overall, I would say it's less about like it being modern and more about it being focused on the population, because a lot of the new modern stuff is just like more and more printed as you get closer to today. So I would say it's more about just like the population of that stuff growing so fast, and that's kind of the reason a lot of that modern stuff softened, and people have like realized that's happening and put their money into the like older goats, and their cards happen to be from eras where there was less printing.
Well, this is why I love these guys. It's data, right? And Josh is saying it doesn't matter how many people are out there who are saying something. He's going to wait until it's quiet, when there's less noise. And noise in the data too, right? Wait till there's less noise, and he's going to say, look, this is what we're seeing now, right? And look, for a lot of people listening, that index is almost not relevant to them, because a lot of people who got into this, they have modern stuff. And, you know, you can look at the modern and it'll tell a different story now, but I think the modern will follow that index. It usually has. Normally when things are going good for everybody, it goes good. But I love, and I don't want to get away from this, I love Josh's take. I love it doesn't matter, you know, like people are screaming, they're trying to will it that way. So I have a question for you. If I yell kabooms are awesome and kabooms are expensive enough times, will that make kabooms worth more money? No, right?
It can in the short term, but what ends up happening is like if you get enough momentum behind something like that, and you get 20 influencer accounts talking about kabooms, and you get people excited about it and kind of like overpaying for a short amount of time, you will definitely see a spike in the short term. The issue is the people who grab onto it after that spike occurs, and then those people get really, really pissed off when it crashes back down inevitably. Not because of the card is bad or anything, just because it's been overheated and overgassed to where the supply increases, people are trying to take profits, prices go down. Those are the ones that at the end of that are going to be overly pissed, and they're going to be very vocal about like losing money on that kind of thing. And then the sentiment around it is like, kaboom, crush me, I hate it. What the hell? Why did I listen to all these people? Versus if it had just gone through like a natural progression of excitement in a more natural state, everyone would have loved kaboom more than they would have in this scenario of like up and then back down. So that's what frustrates me is like, if you would just follow the normal trajectory and like have it be natural, it just is more enjoyable for everybody.
And I think it's also part of your post, right? I mean, I saw a post, don't bite my head off if it wasn't yours, but I'm pretty sure it was yours. I don't really consume much other content, right? But I think it was the Jordan 9, the LeBron Chrome, and the Kobe. And basically what it showed a spike and a back down, but exactly what you just said, Josh, which was that if you just follow that red line across, right, you'll notice that it's a gradual increase over time, which is much more organic. And you got less people screaming who bought it at that peak on the way down, yelling about how, and they're the vocal people. They're the people you're going to see on Twitter or Instagram talking about how kaboom went kaboom. And it makes this whole it's just a bad taste in the market that we didn't need. Because if it followed the normal trajectory of up, people would be happy and enjoying these things, and you'd have that continuing, going up. I think that was your post, right? I'm pretty sure. It
was a share from Sports Card Investments, but yeah, it's definitely he's talked about it before, and he's using card ladder data to point it out, and Chris and I have talked about it several times.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you guys think. So you guys were at National. What makes an influencer? Like I don't want to say everybody, but how many? There's got to be a few hundred accounts on Instagram that are hobby accounts with 4,000, 5,000 followers. Yeah. We're in this really interesting phase of the internet. NFTs are coming, community. What even makes an influencer, right? Like if it's so easy to move a market, where are we even at as a hobby? Maybe I don't know even how to verbalize that question, but if anybody who has a card and a small following can yell from the top of the building saying this card's the best and it goes up in price, it's not the influencer's fault necessarily. It's maybe the maturity of the market. So Chris, any thoughts on that?
I have one of the slowest growing accounts in the hobby, I think, by most metrics. I've been around for 5 years. I still have less than 8,000 followers. So I'm probably the wrong one to ask about what makes an influencer. But I will say that, an influencer to me is somebody who quite literally moves somebody else to take an action. Whether it's to go look at an item on eBay, maybe not to buy it or to bid on it, but just to go look at it, or makes them think a little differently about something. And then if you can motivate a larger number of people to go take a look at something or think a little differently about something, then you probably rise to the level of being recognized as an influencer. And I think you're right. I think we have quite a few in the hobby now. And it's not hard. Like me, I don't care who the account is. I'll just be on a story scroll on Instagram and I'll see a post about a card I wasn't thinking about. And then now I've got a safe search for it on eBay. And now I'm looking for it. So yeah. I don't think it takes much to be an influencer, but maybe I'm wrong.
So then let me ask this, because guys, I don't know if you know this, that none of the guests need truth serum here. Like Cage will speak his mind, Josh will speak his mind. So maybe the better question then is, because you're right, we're all influencers, whether we even have an Instagram account or not. Our dad might be asking us, what card should I buy? What NFT should I buy? Where should I put my money? A friend's getting into the hobby and he asks, I want to buy a card. What card do I buy? That famous first card, So what's the chair just broke. What's the responsibility?
Andrew's leaning a little hard in the chair. Sorry.
No, people are messing with my back support, and when they don't lock it in. Maybe Josh, what's the responsibility, I guess, of an influencer? How should maybe they toe the line of I'm helping and educating versus I'm pumping and chilling?
Sure. Well, I think the easiest way is to be transparent about what you own prior to talking about a card. So it's just a very easy way is just say I own, etc. I think this is a cool card. I enjoy it, whatever. And that's just the easiest way. And we take that pretty serious on the Card Ladder platform. Just to use an example, if we own one of the cards, we'll actually denote it on the profile so you can see which ones we own, because we don't want to get anything twisted or get people confused on if something moves up the ladder, for example, or if the price moves. We don't want to make people think they're trying to hide something. So transparency is the easiest way. I mean, this whole influencer topic is pretty tough because you're talking about human emotions and you're talking about philosophy and stuff. So it's really hard for us, the data guys, to wrap our arms around, how to measure something like this. You're just sort of guessing at it. So for me, it's kind of more of a gut feeling at this point. When I can sense someone, and we were talking about this before the pod, is someone's intent. If I can tell your intention is to profit from this and then dump it, that's the line for me, is your intent on this thing. Or if I can tell you've been collecting this thing for 10 years and you have no intention of actually selling this stuff, then it's different, right? It's you're sharing your passion. And so for me, it's just intention and transparency.
I want to come to you guys, and we're going to talk about the Fanatics news. Then we're going to talk about the eBay PWCC saga. Maybe we'll talk a little bit of all, and then we'll wrap up with what's all the new features on Card Ladder. They have an amazing announcement coming up that you're going to want to be on the platform for in a month. A lot of people out there think that you have to have a huge Instagram following to build a business in the hobby. But I want to give a shout out to a business. I think you guys will appreciate this, and we'll go into the Fanatics thing right after. The Wharf Sports Cards. This guy's business has grown. I don't know. I don't have a peek behind the scenes, but month over month, it's grown. And I know that for a fact. Limited social media presence, limited marketing. And I think all of his business is word of mouth, right? And this is just a guy doing things his own way. And he's I'm just going to do right by my customers. And I'm going to build a fan base that way. So a lot of people come to us and ask us, how do I make money in the hobby? Do I become an influencer or do I make cards? Guys, there's ways to do it, and you don't have to be a social media phenom to do it.
Can I give you an anecdote about Wharf, Nick?
Sure.
All right. So we have a relationship with Nick, a Formula One Card Ladder and Wharf, and he's used some of our graphs and his posts and so on and so forth. And we encourage and we like his business. And, one time I wrote a headline for the Card Ladder newsfeed. This was about 6 months ago. And I said, this card sold, and it was sold by the Wharf. And he messaged me within 10 minutes of me publishing that, partially because when I'm going to sleep at about 4 a.m., he's waking up. And he messaged me within 10 minutes of seeing that. And he says, hey, man, I really appreciate you giving me the shout out here, but I have to let you know that item didn't get paid. The buyer already canceled it. And so could you please take that down? And I've never had an auction house or a seller do that. He's the only person to do that, to proactively write out to me and say, hey, look, I really appreciate this, but don't put that up there because I can tell you right now that the transaction was already canceled. It just speaks to his integrity and that level. And he runs his consignment outfit with that level of integrity. Mm-hmm. And man, that's the gold standard. And I wish, everybody to follow in his footsteps in that regard.
And the results have followed too, right? Like he's gotten more business because he's stayed true to that. All right, let's get into some fun topics because I don't know where these.
This hasn't been
really...
fun. This hasn't been enough fun for you.
Well,
I'm having a blast.
I think people are trying to make sense of the month of August. They're like, all right, this Fanatics news, I'm kind of on the fence about. PWCC eBay. It's
what happened with Fanatics?
Decision. They made a lot of really good swingman jerseys.
But are they using them in National Treasures?
Probably not game used.
No, not anymore.
So anyway, my question's been butchered. But anyway,
this is what I do.
We have Fanatics, which people are trying to make sense of. We have eBay PWCC, which is like a divorce where one kid goes with one parent, the other goes with the other. But no one knows.
Which parent are you going to go with?
I've made my decision.
Oh, I can't wait. Are you taking your talents to South Beach?
Yep. And then the whole alt thing, which we might get into because the guys here know data, they know internet protocols. Most of us don't know that. But let's start with Fanatics. I'll go to you first, Chris, then we'll go to Josh. Help us make sense of this, right? There's obviously going to be positives and negatives, and I don't want to ask a surface level question, is this good or bad for the hobby? But maybe you could do like that whole like interview strengths and weaknesses. How does this maybe play out that this benefits consumers? And how is this maybe what are a few of your worries about this deal?
Sure. Yeah. Downsides first. Potential downsides include serious disruption to the supply chain of product. And to me, the LCS, even if it's an antiquated model, is so important to if nothing else, as a recruitment mechanism to bringing people back into the hobby. When I came back to the hobby in 2016, if I didn't have LCSs to go to and store owners to chat with and sort of bring myself back up to speed and have something that felt familiar, because nothing else felt familiar. eBay, online marketplaces, Beckett magazine just being basically a bunch of numbers, no more editorial content. Everything felt foreign. All right. But the LCS felt familiar, and it was a nice bridge to bring me back to the hobby. So I think, one of the downsides would be a serious disruption to the way the product gets distributed. That worries me. It might not be bad. It might work out for the better, but there's a level of uncertainty there that worries me if the LCS model were to fundamentally change. Also, possible downsides. I know you guys have an NFT friendly audience, so forgive me for this, but I don't want to see NFTs cannibalize sports cards. And I think that there's certain profit motives in business theories that might say, look, if we can have a higher profit margin on converting the sports card industry into an NFT industry, then, we're going to try that. So that concerns me as well. And that concern is heightened because of the exclusivity of the 5 licenses that they've obtained from the NFLPA, MLBPA, MLB, NBPA, and the NBA. The only one they don't have yet is the NFL, and I'm sure that domino will fall. So to me, that's a heightened concern because I want sports cards to continue in something strongly resembling the tradition we have now. And then, other downside is loss of some of our favorite brands. If Panini and Topps are unable to strike licensing deals, or they don't get bought out, that could be a problem. Okay, upsides. One of the best possible outcomes here is that Fanatics and Michael Rubin and some very smart people have taken a look at this situation and have made commitments that are going to amount to 12-figure investments by the time that the deal has expired. So very smart people have taken a look at this industry and seen a massive potential for growth. And that's a vote of confidence that, the action speaks louder than any words could. So I think Fanatics has given a vote of confidence to the sports card industry that's unlike any other vote of confidence we've ever gotten with the amount of resources that they're pledging and plunging into this endeavor. I think Josh Luber, to the extent that he is involved, it's just rumors right now, but I love him as a collector and as a tastemaker and as an influencer. So I think his participation in this thing is potentially going to be tremendous. And, Fanatics, it being a company that's 6 times the size of Panini, just adds a layer just adds a presence that we've never had in this industry before in terms of scale. And I think just Fanatics, you look at the way that they market their apparel during NBA games, NFL games, MLB games, and you look at the way that they market in-stadium experience, and you just kind of look at the way that they have such a strong presence and such a marketing genius about their company, that to bring it to sports cards really could finally take sports cards to that promised land of mainstream relevance. So I think the sky is the limit potentially, but there's some footnotes that I mentioned, some of the possible downsides too.
Josh, any thoughts on it at all?
Yeah.
Just says ditto. Ditto.
No, I mean, Chris did a good job with that.
He did, yeah. I mean, Chris organized that pretty well, so I'll be brief. I think the ceiling is a lot higher than it was before, given the resources of Fanatics, but the floor is a lot lower because we just don't know what it's going to be. Like Chris said, they could just go all digital and just totally scrap cards. I don't think that will happen given the people that are involved in it. I don't see that happening. I think the ceiling for me, like the only thing that Chris didn't touch on that I will is like the X factor being that Fanatics really wants to tap into like the nostalgia and sort of like bringing back some old brands that a lot of people are excited to see in cards again, whether that be, Topps Chrome or Exquisite, and not necessarily those exact ones. They may buy the licensing for that, but like, similar things where they make improvements to like the inserts and parallels. They reduce some of the noise with like the silly like zebra stripe stuff, and they really like hone in on what people actually want. That would be the ceiling for me. It may not be true for everybody, but being able to tap into like what people want nostalgically out of cards, I think has a lot of potential on that front.
Before we jump off, Andrew, just to hammer home something Chris said, because it's not even something that I thought about until he just went through his whole little dance here. One of the questions that I get asked pretty often as someone who was collecting in the 80s, and you guys probably were last time around too, is where some of the people who were able to see the last boom cycle, right? The Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Upper Deck through the 92 Shaq and, Jordan and all that stuff, right? And one of the questions we get asked all the time is can that happen now? And of course it can happen now. Of course we could be going through a period where it's, we're already halfway through this boom cycle and it's going to burst and, the kaboom cabal is going to take us all down and blah, blah, blah. It may very well happen. Who knows? But what Chris is saying, it really is a confidence booster to folks out there who are buying cards, who are investing in cards, people who hold 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures in cards, right? And had that question in the back of their mind of is this going to go bust? Is Panini going to, turn those printing presses, on fast forward and the whole thing's just going to collapse, right? Smarter people than me. I know Josh is very, very smart. Sorry, Chris, he's the smart one. But, so there may not be anyone at Fanatics smarter than Josh, but there are smart people at Fanatics, right? And they have decided to invest a shit ton of money in the future of this hobby, right? And that should give everyone a little bit of confidence that this is not going away tomorrow. It's not going away next year, as long as Panini and Topps don't completely shit the bed before the handoff. But, it's a great point, Chris. It really is. And for anybody who's collecting, anybody who got into this in the last couple of years, you should really, let that point sink in, right? Because there are people putting a lot of money, a lot of resources into the future of this hobby and the fact that it's going to succeed. And that should make everybody sleep a little better at night with their, with their assets. So thanks for that one. It's not even something that I've kind of focused on, as part of this deal.
Where my one concern is, and I'm curious if you guys agree with this or where you guys stand on this, is there's two hobbies, right? There's the rich man's hobby and then there's the little man, right? And I think we try to throw them all in this lump, like it's all for the hobby. And I hear you guys, but there's people with big pockets that I think in 2021, those pockets are now lined. But I think there's people on the sidelines like, all right, great. I mean, PSA bought out, Fanatics bought out, but I'm the little guy. I got in last year and I can't even send my cards in to get graded. And that was the way I used to make my money. So the hobby's growing, this pie is growing, but I've got a smaller pizza slice. So I'm curious, do you guys share that worry for, I mean, honestly, Cage, you're the one that put this little breadcrumb of an idea in my brain and I can't let it go, is what about the little man, right? How is he or she going to color up? Are those opportunities even there? What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, that's a great point. I've felt this for a few months now, where it seems like, if I try to recommend to a friend to get into the hobby, it's really hard for me to recommend to them because the things that I know have like a strong staple in the hobby are just so expensive that I just, I can't like look them in the eyes and be like, yeah, you should drop 10 grand on one card. It's a really, like to your point, it's very dominated by the big guy. I will say though, the potential of Fanatics getting involved could be good for that scenario you're drawing out, because Fanatics wants to hit the masses. They want to actually, they have a wider reach than some of these smaller companies. So like their goal isn't just going to be to like make, $50,000 cards. It's going to be to get more overall people involved and get like more of the masses types numbers. So I think we could see, a cheaper line of cards come out, and like them do, and then them having to control the actual distribution and the pricing models and the price, like the retail price, and not have the distributors in the middle. And to Chris's point, they may not have LCS in the middle to boost the prices up, and breakers. Even we may not even know what comes out of this from the breaking point of view. If they can control the full end to end, we may see prices more controlled by them, and they could be lower to try to gain more mass appeal. So we could see a resurgence on the lower end for sure.
Chris, you brought up NFTs and how like you don't want the hobby to go the NFT route. I actually think the biggest threat to cards is more digital cards, right? We typically conflate NFTs with digital cards, but I actually think breakers, for example, could be, I don't know if put out of business, but Cage, I'm actually leading here and I want you to jump in because we signed up for this project, Panini NFTs, but they weren't really NFTs because you can't take them out of Panini. You can't sell them for crypto. It was just digital cards, and they're numbered. Even the base versions were numbered to 1799. The silvers were out of 149. Blues were and that made it really cool because oftentimes with like color blasts and things like that, we don't know how many are out there, right? They put SSP, but we don't know.
If you can get over the hump of that it's a digital card, who doesn't want a numbered color blast? Wouldn't you love one of those if it was on cardboard? You know what I mean? So, it's an interesting thing. But go ahead, Andrew.
Where do you guys stand on digital cards? Do you think that could be kind of cool or interesting? Maybe I'll go to you, Chris Hodge, because I would call Chris Hodge. It's Chris House of Jordan's. But
there's three variations of me. There's Chris House of Jordan's, Chris Hodge, and Chris Hoge, depending upon who I'm talking to.
My sport favorite, mine is Chris Hodge's live. Exactly, Josh. Josh got it. Josh got it. He beat me to it, too. Nice job. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, my take on it, and I'll let these guys chime in, is I think there's room for both. But I think Panini, I don't know what they're doing with their digital cards. I hope it doesn't, vampire, I guess is a good word, the actual cardboard, the tangible assets, because there's room for that to expand so much. I think there is room for digital cards. I mean, Top Shot's not going away, right? I think they overproduced the hell out of that stuff, and they'll probably learn from that and then, right size it and the whole deal. They have NBA licenses, and I think it is, people didn't love AMD for a while, right? They didn't love these chip manufacturers. Intel was the big boss, right? People didn't love Samsung for a little while because Apple was running everything, right? But you need those little bit of a competitor out there. And if Fanatics is basically going to have everything, right? Well, then that digital space might be one area to monopoly bust. You know what I mean? And if the 95% of people want to stay with Fanatics cards, sure, the other 5% can go and play in the Top Shot world or the Panini digital assets that may not be licensed. I mean, they're putting out baseball ones now anyway. So I think there's room for it all. I don't think it has to be an or. I don't see, and this is taken from somebody who's been collecting, cardboard now for, I mean, if you count the 80s, I'm in my 5th decade of collecting cards here. 80s, 90s, 2000, 5 different decades of collecting cards here. Cards are not going anywhere. And they're not going to get taken over by the digital stuff. There's room for it. It's going to take a tiny little slice, but I think it is really just an and thing if done the right way. I'd love to see Fanatics take a stab at it because the companies that have done it so far, Topps with Wax, which was a mess. Panini really, they haven't really done it in a way that I would. Maybe Fanatics does it in a good way. Maybe they pair it up with the cards some way. This way it's kind of like a bolt-on to the actual cardboard. Who knows?
What some people don't realize until you go through it, it actually puts pressure on grading companies, right? because why we send to PSA and BGS and SGC and HGA and all these companies is because we want to be able to compare apples to apples, right? But when you have digital cards and you know the exact kind of scarcity or supply of each one, I mean, there's no PSA 10 of a digital art. So it actually puts a little pressure on.
Hang on. I'm getting another call here. Yeah, Cage. Oh, hi, Mike Baker. Mike Baker wants me to tell you that there's different types of apples.
All right, let's keep it.
All apples are not the same. No? Just oh, okay. Sorry, guys.
Most our fans know what you're talking about. The Cage posse, they're cracking up that you just can't tell. Guys, let's talk a little bit about PWCC and eBay. When you guys first saw that announcement, I'll go to you, Josh, and then we'll go to Chris. What was your first impression when you saw that announcement?
I was worried that we'd lose a lot of data because PWCC's been very important to the hobby because of the data that they provide, and they've been working with eBay to make sure that data gets put out in a organized fashion. And I was worried that once this happened, eBay was doing this as a move to lock up their data more so than they already do. And I just think that could be a catastrophic, mistake on the part of eBay towards the entire hobby, and that, they're looking for their own internal profits and they're looking for like their own bottom line, but they could really make a devastating blow to the hobby just in the fact that they control so much of the pricing data. And it makes me nervous. That was my initial reaction. The second, I guess, was like, what the heck happened here? Like, what? I don't. It's just like it just seemed like a very emotional move. Chris and I kind of dissected the email. The email felt emotional, and I know people have come at Chris and I and been like, well, these guys have all this money on the line. They wouldn't have been emotional. Well, that's not the way the email felt to me. So that was my reaction, is like, man, someone pissed someone off and they just said, screw you, you're gone. And, PWCC's recovered fairly well. I think they're already like launching something today to react to it. So like, I think PWCC will end up being fine. I'm just interested to see how the data shakes out.
When this came out, I've had choice words for PWCC since basically started this podcast. I mean, when we had Jesse on, one of the first things he said was like, I know, Andrew, when we had Jesse on the first time, I know you haven't been a big supporter of PWCC. What I don't understand about our hobby, Chris, I'll ask you this. It's like guilty until proven innocent type of thing. And like everyone in the comments jumps out and it's like, well, good. That's what they deserve. Everyone knows they shill. And okay, day one, fine. Day two, fine. Day three. But eventually you can't just go around throwing these huge accusations out at people with no evidence. Regardless if it's PWCC or ABC company or any company. Like, does that bother you? And why are we such a hobby that we're quick to put people in our businesses, not even people, into this bucket of you're guilty with no proof?
Yeah, Andrew, great point. I do find it amusing, by the way, that you have this like you have this small issue. Like you're such a peaceful, neutral, great guy, but PWCC just rubs you the wrong way. That amuses me.
We might have it because in the beginning we basically we zoomed every one of our calls because he was in some random undisclosed location with Dick Cheney in Mexico somewhere, and so we have everything on Zoom. And I'm telling you, he was going through his PWCC account, and it was about his fees. And it was like, okay, I sent it to the vault, and I got an invoice, and he paid it. And then he tried to do something else. And he's like, there's more fees. There's another invoice. They're giving me an invoice on my invoice. And it was the funniest thing in the world because he was just losing his mind about the fees on the fees. And he's like, I'm never doing this again. This is ridiculous.
It was like $83.49 total. It wasn't even the amount.
Look, we all have that point. We all read that something will get us that point. And I understand that there is some legitimate grievances with how the fee structure is presented and then ultimately implemented. So, I'll tell you, I'm sure the people at PWCC heard it and are taking that feedback very seriously. Okay, so I think eBay, there's now a burden on eBay as the big player here, the $10 billion a year entity, to back up its accusation with evidence. I think that has to happen. And I think it's a duty to the hobby community.
Do you think it will, though?
I don't think they will. I don't even think there's even a slight chance. I did a poll. I asked my Instagram followers about this, and the poll results were like 93% no, eBay will not supply the evidence. But I think that they should, and I think anytime somebody, to Andrew's point, anytime somebody in the hobby, whether it's the biggest player in the game or the smallest fish, if you make an accusation, can we please see the evidence and let us as critical, rational human beings evaluate it and make up our own mind. I think that's really important, an important standard to have. Go ahead, Gage.
So Andrew's problem is he still reads the comments. You know what I mean? Like something like this happened. It's like, oh, PWCC and Probstein's next, and everybody shills. And HGA, they're not a real company. Cage is stunningly handsome. You know, like you can't read the comments. You know what I mean? Like you know,
I read every comment.
You never know what's going to be
That's
in
where
those comments. You know.
I think there's a lot of health reading the comments. Obviously, you don't want them to affect your peace of mind, but that's how I learned. Like, I love to see what people are thinking about.
Yeah. Well, that PWCC one, guys. Josh, you listen. Pin the tail on the donkey. You got it, man. I mean, I read that email and I'm like, it is emotion. There was something here. Like somebody peed in somebody's cornflakes. Like this was bad, man. Like it was, and you're right. It's supposed to be just like, oh, it's nothing. It's business. A business decision. It's not a business. This was not business. This was eBay looking after their bottom line. This was, you know, they probably asked PWCC to do something, and PWCC told them no. You know, there was something to this, and they were just like, all right, that's it. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. You know, like that Zion Prism one, the variation where he's got his ball like this, and he's like, you know, taking his ball.
The
optic, exactly, optic,
yeah.
right? He's like, I got my ball, I'm going home. You know, like that's somebody should make Lameme James even listen. Make a eBay one, the Zion eBay with the take the ball and go home. I'm taking my ball, I'm going home. That's what you're 100% right. That's what I thought when I read that email, and it's like associates of. What kind of standard is that, right? And obviously, we're not sponsored by any of these guys. We don't get any money from PWCC. We don't get any money from eBay. We don't get any money from any of these guys. Not the Wharf, not anybody. But here's what scares me, right? It's that poem, right? The one where it's like, you know, they came for these guys, and I said nothing because I wasn't one of those guys. They came for these guys. I said nothing. I wasn't one of those guys. And when they finally came for me, there was nobody left to speak up, right? So we talk about the Wharf and how he's the most ethical person on earth. But what happens when somebody who consigns with Wharf, not Wharf on his own, what happens when somebody who consigns with Wharf goes and shills their own stuff up? That's somebody who's got repeat business with the Wharf. That's someone who's, quote, associated with the Wharf. And we all know Nick is about as ethical as it comes, right? I mean, look, we tried to be in business with him. He didn't want to be in business with him. You know, nobody wants to be in business with Cage. I'm not ethical. But no, so
loose cannon.
I'm a loose cannon, man. So but the truth obviously is that's not on him. He wouldn't have done shit. He would have nothing to do with that. And you know that if he sees it, he's going to stop it. He's going to tell you guys. He's going to say, you can't do this. He's going to do everything he can to weed it out. But sometimes you can't. It's on eBay, right? It's on their platform. You know, there's no way to weed it out sometimes. And they can send him an email and be like, yo, someone associated with you has shill bid. And goodbye. I mean, you know, you're right, man. It's emotions, but it's more of just that whole, like, you're guilty until proven innocent. Well, what's next, right? Who what's to stop them from doing this with everybody? I don't think that's going to happen because I think they specifically were targeting PWCC. I do.
Yeah, the guilty until proven innocent is the part that really ticks me off as well, Andrew. I'm glad that you jumped into that topic because, you know, if eBay comes out and shows this proof, then sure, I'm going to jump all over PWCC and be like, look, this is the issue. This is what they did wrong. This is what you should avoid. Same thing like when the proof came out on alt. When I saw the data and I saw the line of code and I saw them, you know, say what they were doing with the data, now I have the proof to be able to make my opinion on something, right? Until then, you know, you're just getting pissed off and screaming at people. And that's why PWCC is coming back and they're going to want to sue for defamation because if you're not going to provide the proof, then all you're doing is slandering my name. So like now we have a different problem.
Business disparagement. I think we all know if there was evidence, Carpool would have found it already.
So alt, I don't even know if they admitted to their mistake, but they cleared it up. Josh, you're on this data side of things. You understand GL.
Did they clear it up, or did they just wait for the PWCC thing to happen and put them in the rearview mirror? Object and mirrors are just forgotten about now because something worse happened.
I was going to ask Josh that because when we don't understand things, we're quick to move on. When we understand, we know show bidding, we know how it works. We're like, we'll jump all over that. But GLDPR or whatever those standards are, because we don't know them.
It's called Elemental P. It's the European Elemental P. GPDB, EBDBDB. Josh can explain it because
GDPR.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
GDPR. Were you satisfied with how they handle it? And if it was you, how would you have handled this whole situation?
So I've worked in the tech industry for a long time, and when I worked at my last company, we had to stop the presses. Everything we were working on, bugs, features, we had to stop the presses for 3 months to satisfy GDPR laws. And you never see businesses stop the presses on any new feature work or things like that, unless it's very, very serious. So like we had a lot of meetings about this has to get done. There's no questions about it. Do it or else kind of thing. And so, we had to take it very seriously, and it was ingrained in our minds that this data privacy stuff is no joke. I mean, you've seen these like very serious meetings with Congress where they're like berating these tech companies on what are you doing with this data, trying to put laws in place to prevent it from happening. Apple has come out. I'm working on something right now related to this. Apple is coming out with like a hard stop on if you release an app and you don't request permission to track data, nope, your app is off the App Store. They don't care. There's a lot of protection around this stuff right now. It's very sensitive. So I'm just hyper aware of what it is and why it's so sensitive. And I was ready to give them the benefit of the doubt. I said this on the live that I thought like, oh, it was just a coding mistake. They didn't realize they were pulling the whole HTML. But then in their response, it was basically like, yeah, we knew we were doing that. And we were using this data to provide a better product for our customer, which is code speak for we're pulling your data, researching it, and, selling it to advertising companies or changing our software to cater to what you do, which is not legal. So I was actually not satisfied with their answer because, well, I mean, they admitted to the truth of what was happening, which was the part that was so bad. They almost could have just like lied and said it was a coding mistake, and people would have been less upset myself. But I don't know. It seemed really bad to me. I know what you're supposed to be doing on that, and that is not the way to do it. They said they've stopped it. And, I have no reason to believe that they're continuing to do it if they said they're going to stop it. But it from my perspective, it was a very, very massive mistake, and they openly admitted to it. So that's enough for me. I've seen, like I said earlier, I've seen the evidence now. They've admitted to it. I've seen the code. That's enough for me to make my opinion and kind of move on.
Couldn't they be using, and this is like a question that I kind of know the answer to now, but I want to ask it anyway. Couldn't they be using this data to, make a better user experience for me as a customer, knowing my behaviors, knowing what I'm looking for? Aren't there benefits for me as well? Sure.
Totally. There are benefits. The issue is the permission, like the lack of permission is the issue. So like if, when you're, if you've signed up for software products or you like create a Gmail, they'll ask you like, hey, do you want to opt into like our product improvement, whatever the heck, and, send your data across and we'll track it. Like they're asking you check the little box and you say, yes. Same for GDPR. That was the changes we had to make at our company was like, we could continue to track the data. We just had to put like a permission request in front of it before we began tracking it. Same with Apple. You have to ask the user, prompt them with a dialogue. Are you okay with us tracking? Great. Continue on. No, don't. It's really that simple. So the fact that they didn't ask is really, that's all of it. Just the lack of permission part.
Let's talk. I want to get into Card Ladder, and this will dovetail into it. Grading companies, right? So we had a post. It didn't get a lot of love. It was actually our least liked post. But we try to make things that people will engage with and learn from. And something that I'm seeing now is people don't know where to send their cards, especially their raw cards, right? And you guys track a ton of data. Where would you, let's say you were holding, last year you would have probably put this into a bulk sub to PSA for $8, $10, $12, but now there's no option. Where would you guys be sending your modern cards, your Tyrese Maxey's, your Jameis Wiseman base? What would you be doing with those cards where a year ago, those were pretty nice cards to pull, right? Like a John Morant. Now, I'm not really sure what to do with that card. I could go to you first, Chris, and then we'll come back to Josh.
Yeah, well, I pulled up your post, and that post has 159 comments.
Yeah, and like 23 likes.
That stirred some feelings. Yeah, that stirred some feelings for sure.
He didn't say it was our least interacted with post.
No,
he said it was our least liked post.
Right. Well, sometimes, polarize. It's better to make people feel anyway than to have them be indifferent. So,
well, listen, let's be fair. I think of those 159, 153 of the comments were from Card Wax.
There you go. Okay, so I think, I'm not going to take a side over SGC versus HGA, except to say, obviously, SGC has a much richer history in the hobby, but HGA is showing a lot of potential, and people like both. I don't think, either one is a bad option. And one thing I'll tip my hat to HGA on is they very responsibly managed their lack of a backlog by creating the queue system. I thought that was a very responsible approach to opening their doors to the public to do business. And SGC, look, SGC has bailed out the hobby several times when PSA and BGS went down, and they kept their doors open and they found ways to scale. And I see both of those slabs doing well on the market. So I don't think you can go wrong. And, I've acquired a pile of cards from Rip and Wax in 2021 because the last time I submitted was in January, and that was when PSA still had their bulk rates available, which feels like, a century ago. But, now I'm looking at SGC and HGA and some others. And I'm saying, if PSA's bulk order, if I'm not able to submit cards to PSA at a $20 rate in the next few months, and I'm going to have to go to somebody else who's willing to take my $20, and I'll have to more seriously, weigh the pros and the cons of these different companies. But, I'm happy to see the leading grading companies leading this new charge. I'm happy to see both of them doing well, SGC and HGA, and CSG, a few of the others too.
Yeah. You gave me an easy out by asking what I would do personally, or what I do now. I used to, fully transparent, I used to grade and flip a lot. Like it was honestly, like, no joke, it was printing money. It was the easiest way to make money in like the world. It was just so easy. You could just buy a shiny card, get it graded on $20 or $10, get it back in a few weeks, sell it for 3 times what you just paid. It was ridiculously easy. I don't do it anymore at all. There's the margins don't make sense anymore. The turnaround times don't make sense. The cost of grading doesn't make sense. It may still make sense. I'd have to look at the math on HGA and SGC. I haven't dug into that enough, but the profit margin is definitely a lot thinner than it used to be. And for me, like personally, I just don't, I don't want to take on the risk of doing it anymore. There's not enough payoff. It's not easy enough. And that's just the reality. Like the party's over. That ship has sailed. Nobody's making, a crap ton of money grading and flipping anymore. It still can happen. There's still cases where you can get a rare card. It happens to gem. You paid less, quite a bit less for raw, and it happens. But the percentages and the ratios don't really add up anymore. Like you're talking about you're only going to make money on a card that gems 10% of the time. And if it gems in that 1 out of 10 case, you're making money. But for the other 9 times, you're not, and you're actually just breaking even. So like it doesn't make any sense anymore. So, selfish personal answer, I'm just not doing it anymore. It's sad. Those days are over of printing money, but that's how it goes.
Cage, I'm going to use one of your quotes. You always say nature abhors a vacuum. And that last 3 minutes of Josh, I would go back and re-listen, because that's why NFTs have shot up the way they did. At least that's my
Look
opinion.
what he did there, Josh. He just made you a Top Shot fan. You didn't think he was going to do that, did you?
Well, when you can't get your alpha, when you can't get your alpha with something that you normally do, you go and look for other ways to make your money.
Totally.
And when your NFT could go from $200 to $5,000, you're like, okay, well, at least got to put my money there. So it's well said. Let's talk a little bit about Card Ladder and we'll wrap. You guys have.
Andrew, can I jump in on one last thought on grading?
Please.
I want to tip the hat to CSG because here's how they've rolled out their product. And in all honesty, I don't love the giant label on the slab. So maybe that could get fixed. But here's what I like about CSG. I like the fact that they announced from day one, here are our senior graders. I think it was cutthroat but necessary that they poached them from Beckett. They name those guys. Those guys have bios. You can read all about them and their history in the hobby. I think the more transparency we have about grading standards, about who the graders are, and about how that process works, the better. And I think CSG's approach of building credibility from the ground up by saying, here's our senior graders, here's what they believe, here's their history in the hobby, here's their bona fide credentials with respect to authenticating cards, because an important part of grading is authentication. And that's something that no grading company can escape. And no grading company should be trying to take shortcuts on authentication, because that can come back to bite you 5 years from now, whenever. So that gave me a lot of confidence in CSG. I wish the slabs looked more appealing. That's just my honest critique. But I wanted to give them a shout out. And I know you guys have a lot of influential listeners. And so I wanted that to filter to the audience too, that like, that credibility building that CSG did was it really resonated with me.
And I mean, Cage, we had him on twice, right? We had Max Spiegel on both times, and we had Andy Broom, who was the head grader. I mean, it's a professional business. That's a professional business that's well run. Like, you can't really say much about them.
And we got to talk to them a little bit at National also. I mean, definitely. Professional is, through and through. They know what they're doing. And guys, look, obviously, if you're listening to this, you hear our intro, our outro, our pre-roll and our post-roll. We are sponsored by HGA. Just like these guys at Card Ladder, they tell you, hey, here's the price of the card. Here's the valuation we have for the card. We own this card. Obviously, we're sponsored by HGA. But like all of our sponsors, we make sure that when we sign on with somebody, that we're not going to be cut off at the legs. We're going to tell you, the good, the bad. I mean, we do a fractional report this week, and I talked about things that were overpriced on collectible. And it's the same thing here, right? And we had Tyler Hitt on last week talking about why he would send certain of his own cards to SGC instead of grading it with HGA, that he wouldn't send vintage cards to his own company right now, right? I mean, like, that is legit. And what Chris is saying, what Josh is saying, it's all legit, right? Think about it. I'll tell you right now, what Josh is saying, it really hits home with me. I mean, I made money grading Andre Drummond cards. Who can say that? Nobody. But it was that printing money is exactly what it was. It was $50 bills like Goonies, right? I mean, it was really like printing money. And you can't do that because PSA is closed. And if Willy Wonka shuts down the chocolate factory, you got to go to Slugworth, man. You got to go to these other guys that are popping up and are opening up a way to do it. And Josh is a 1,000,000% right. You're not going to have the margins, You're not going to have that 10x on every single card. But whether it's CGC, whether it's HGA, whether it's SGC, you have to figure out. Chris probably made the point the right way, right? A lot of us haven't thought about grading with these other companies yet because we're still hoping, with fingers crossed, with bated breath, that PSA is going to open, that Nat Turner wearing his cape. I love the man. We've had him on a bunch of times. I got to talk to him at the National. I was not sold on that guy. Talk about a good steward for the hobby. Forget about it. We couldn't be in better hands. He wants to open his stuff up, right? But dummies like me who sent in Darius Baisley during the bubble, my house cards to grade, because why wouldn't I? I was still making money on that junk, right? I mean, obviously, I'm at fault here. I'm sorry, Josh, because now you can't print money. It's my fault.
Sure.
My Optic, my houses, and all these other bullshit that I sent in. Revolution cards I'm grading for my son. Sorry. But the truth is, we're all sitting here hoping that Wonder Nat is going to open up the bulk grading for us, and we don't have to make that decision. But Chris, he hit, you hit the pin, you put the tail on the donkey, right? Chris hit the pinata and cracked it open here. What is that? Somebody got is a storm coming in by you, Andrew? So
yeah, hurricane.
Ida bothering you? Nice, lovely. At least the kid's not kidnapped or something. You never know what kind of warning it is. So, but Chris hits the pinata right open because he hasn't thought about where he's going to grade yet, right? But eventually, in a month or 2 months, that stack of raw that you're opening and breaks or whatever you're doing, you got to figure out what you're going to do with it, where you're going to grade it, right? That's what our post was supposed to be about, right? It's a comparison. You guys do your own research on it. Figure out what kind of margins you're potentially going to get. They're not going to be PSA margins like Josh was getting. And maybe you're in Josh's camp. Maybe you're just not going to do it anymore until PSA opens the doors back up and Augustus Gloop, Josh, Mike TV, and the rest of the crew can go back into the factory and get those margins again.
I think it's because we're all, like you always say, we're all gamblers. So I always say, send 10 cards to SGC, 10 to HGA, 10 to CSG, and see what learn through testing. But I've given you that advice, Cage. Like, he's like, should I sell all my Devontae Graham? And I'm like, well, you could sell some of them. He's like, no, all or nothing. And I think we often think like that. Let me ask you, Josh, Is Beckett the last domino to fall? Like, to me, they look very attractive from a buyout standpoint.
Well, they're buying other companies right now, so I don't know if they're really wanting to get swallowed up yet.
Oh my God.
They definitely do. I mean, it seems like they are a candidate, but if the owners don't want to get bought, then it kind of seems like that's the case because I feel like they would have been bought by now, just based on all the activity and movement over the last couple of years. I don't know. Maybe they're just doubling down on themselves and they're just going to keep going. I don't know.
All right, fine. This isn't going to be one of my BGS episodes. Let's wrap with this, guys. So,
by the way, PWCC and then BGS, right? So
it's not even close. It's not even close.
That's Andrew's S list, huh? Okay, gotcha.
It's not even. No, PWCC is like was upset 2 out of 10. BGS, I'm upset 9 out of 10. Close to 10 out of 10. On like,
That just means you care, man. That's all.
dude, they don't take care of their customers. And their customers are what make them live in beautiful houses, nice yachts, nice cars. Like, if I'm holding a black label BGS card, to me, I'm really, really scared because I don't know what that brand is. They don't speak to me. But let's talk about Card Ladder, a brand that's doing it right. And guys, like, you're growing organically. I think like that's the best compliment you could really give someone, right? Because anyone could like pour, gas on a fire, huge marketing spend, sponsored ads, and I'm sure you guys think about that. But I feel like your growth is word of mouth, and honestly, it's through that community you've built. And a lot of people before we had you on asked, "Are you going to bring your main podcast back?" I can't remember the name, but like you guys had a podcast before crossover, right? Are you going to bring that back?
I think you might be referring to, we had a YouTube show.
Yep.
Called, and so it's called Sports Cards Culture, and we will bring it back. It's just we have one chief content officer who's responsible for our video work, and he's been pumping out our national documentary, which it just concluded 4 parts. And then any day this week now, we're releasing one full-length version of the documentary. So that's pretty exciting. And we will be bringing it back as soon as his editing slate is available, which will be next week. So we will be bringing it back. Thank you for asking.
Nice. What's new at Card Ladder? You guys are adding cards. I know you guys are. It's just for people. I mean, most people are on Card Ladder, whether that's a free trial they signed up for, or most people are probably on the paid plan. What's new? What's new under the hood?
Before they go into what's new, right, and we get into that, tell people for the one person living under a rock who hasn't signed up for Card Ladder yet, got any promotions, got anything going on, how do they get a free 1 month access? And before you do that, I just want to give my promo, because these guys, they don't want to toot their own horn, right? They let the data speak for itself. That's why I love Josh. Josh is talking about the data. He wants the data. He wants eBay's data. He wants PWCC's data. He wants everyone's data. He wants data. But here's my thing. These guys are that chart. These guys are what we talked about. They are that steady line. They don't need the spike. They want that organic growth. They want to grow the right way. They don't need to throw fake influencer gasoline on the fire, because it's a quality product that is just growing in numbers and use over time. And I've said this in some comments, and I'll say it right now on the podcast. It's the kind of product that can only be produced by guys like these, people who know the hobby, people who live the hobby, people who bleed the hobby, cry about the hobby when it gets them sad, get elated about the hobby when it gets them happy, right? It's not somebody, I mean, Josh is a data guy, but he also bleeds this stuff, you know what I mean? And you need to be able to do that. It's the kind of product that can only be created by guys like these two. So I'll give you applause on it, because there really is, there's a lot of people putting out data tools, and maybe this will cost me a sponsor down the road. I don't really care. There's nobody doing it like you guys are doing. A lot of people nipping at your heels, they're not even close. What you guys have produced is head and shoulders better than anybody else has produced anything. So I'll give you a big high five. I'll give you a big, toot your horn for you if you're not going to do it. Now tell me where they can find you if they don't already have it. The promos, what you got going on, and then what else is new.
Well, thank you for that, Cage. Thank you quite a bit. Cardladder.com is the website that you can go to, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but we've got a suite of software features that's a little too numerous to list. But whether it's collection tracking, whether you want to know the price of pretty much any card, we've got the features to enable you to do that, including cards not in our database. And that's one of our newest features, in fact, is a price check feature that within about 20 seconds, you can know the price of just about any card using our software. I won't go into the weeds of it. It can get technical, but I have spoken about it at length on the Crossover podcast and other places, and feel free to DM me. I love to talk about this stuff. So does Josh. Also, we have our full-blown application experience is available in the Google Play Store for Android users and in the Apple Store for iPhone users. So we have covered the whole gamut of devices. And I believe we're one of the very few entities in the hobby to have a full-blown app on all platforms and on all devices. So, and you don't need to be a premium user, although we'd love you to have you as one, because that's where you're going to get the best and the most robust experience. But we'd love to have you as a free user too. And you can be a free user and enjoy the app. You can be a free user and enjoy the website as well. So there it is. Thank you guys for letting me say that.
Let me ask. So, if we get into the weeds, for maybe one example, and then we'll wrap here. So, there was the Wayne Gretzky OPG PSA 9 that just sold on PWCC. And this applies probably more to vintage cars, base cars. It's easy to comp base cards, right? We all know what those go for, but it gets really tough when there's like an OPG card where not every PSA 9 is created equal, right? So, and you see there's one that sold for 118,000 on August 9th through Golden, and then August 21st through PWCC, it sold for 204,000. Clearly, eye appeal is way different on the 204. But like Josh, like obviously as a one-off, that's easy, but those happen all the time. How do you scrub for data? How do you clean that up so that someone could so they can make sense of it?
Oh, that's a Chris question, 100%. I would just butcher that, so don't even. I have no
Okay,
idea.
my apology.
That burden falls on me. He's being polite, but that's my burden to bear. And you know what, Andrew? There is no good answer to that question. It's Cage gave a shout out to MBA a little bit earlier, and the fact that MBA exists, or the fact that PWCC eye appeal stickers exist, is a testament to the fact that even within a grade, there are levels to it. It's a spectrum.
MBA is Mike Baker.
Correct.
Authentication, something like that.
Exactly. So, and even the Gretzky OPG is a great example of the PSA 9. That was a PWCC E, meaning PWCC determined it was top 15%. We had a Michael Jordan 86 Fleer PSA 10 sell for 840,000. PWCC in that asset description said it's literally the best copy they've ever seen. And Eric Myers attested to that as well. So is that the same thing as a PSA 10 that does not have any designation as being top 30 or top 15 or top 5%? I think the market has spoken loudly and clearly on that one, that there are different levels of PSA 10s. There are different levels of PSA 9s. There are different levels of BGS 9.5. The same problem happens with BGS as well, because you have the subgrades. So you have a BGS 9.5 True Gem Plus, and then you have a BGS 9.5 Min Gem, and those are treated by the market as two totally different items. And Andrew, we don't have a good solution to that. It's too granular, it's too precise, and the listing methodologies that auction houses and people on eBay use, they don't distinguish them properly. So at a certain point, you just have to say, well, like for the OPG Gretzky, this is going to be an amalgamation of data points that are going to vary and fluctuate. And just is what it is. We do control for it in some situations. So, like if that Gretzky OPG had sold for, let's say, 300, and there were copies readily available at the time, and other copies that went for auction for significantly less, like 60, 70% of that price, we would have excluded that OPG sale. The outlier, we would have excluded it, and we would have sent it to a different folder. So the data point's still there. You can still see it, but we wouldn't display it on the graph. But at the time of that sale, there were no other copies of that OPG available. So we included it. But it's a tough call, man.
You know what I
it
love
always
about
is.
the hobby, Chris?
What's
So
that?
you got your data, you got your walkthroughs on this. Sometimes it takes care of itself, right? Because that Gretzky, you had one that was probably a bottom 10% Gretzky, where there was a quote oil smudge on the word oiler, and it sold for below what it should have been.
Right.
And then the next one, or two later, one comes out that is the cleanest copy that I've ever seen, where it doesn't have any rough edge on the side. Those OPGs and the PSA 9s, they're notorious have that little white rough edge on the side of the light blue. And this card, it was clean cut, which, by the way, you got to be a little careful with. You got to worry about how clean that is. Was a dentist tool used on that? I don't know exactly. But point being, get on the blowout detective agency there and see what's going on. But
it's an honest question. Like we laugh, but it's an honest question.
No, and Andrew, and Cage makes an excellent point. I do like that you look between the period of July 18th and August 21st, copies of that card sold for anywhere between 102,000 and 204,000. And that's not market volatility. That's the sole cause of that, not even close. So, but Andrew, the other thing that this speaks to philosophically is how do you value an item, and how important are comps, and should comps be the end of the story? And I think the further you dig into this, the more it becomes clear that there is no one definitive value on any item that can be tied to any comp, and that each item is going to ultimately have to have its day. and run at auction or find a buyer. And then when that particular item sells, we know that at least at one point in time, the item sold for that much, and that's all we know. And so comps are helpful tools. Algorithms can be helpful tools. Player indexes can be helpful tools. Overall market indexes can be helpful tools. But at the end of the day, we don't know what an item is worth until somebody decides to pay that much for it. And then you know what? A week later, there might not be anybody else wanting to pay that much for it, or there might be two guys wanting to pay more for it. You just don't know. You have some tools.
First, folks.
Yep.
Chris Hodge, straight from Chris Hodge's mouth, the hobby is full of tools, and only some of them are helpful.
There you go. Indeed.
Well, if I pick up, like, you know, and we try to do this with our show too, you know, we try to get people to third base, right? But at the end of the day, you got to think for yourself. You got to teach people, right? Like, it's easy to give someone to play. I was watching Two for the Money, that old Brandon Lang movie today, about sports betting and giving out plays, and it was hilarious. Like, they would call into this hotline and give plays.
Man with a $1 billion plan.
Yes, Cage knows. Cage is an encyclopedia of movie quotes. It's sickening. But I think what you guys try to do is, hey guys, this is clean data. Here's all of these tools with Card Ladder. But at the end of the day, you have to make your own decisions. You have to learn how to be a good investor and what it means to be a good investor. So I commend you for that, because that's all you could do. And I hope that people understand on the other line that are listening, on the other end of this, it's your responsibility to take those tools and learn. No one can help you do that for you. Know, they can just provide you with the resources. So unless there's any final words, I think it's a great place to end. We're just over an hour. This was one of my favorite episodes because we kind of gave you like a, you know, what's happening in the hobby the last month, what it looks like moving forward. We covered a variety of topics. Guys, I appreciate your time. I really do, man. I appreciate you guys being so easy to schedule with and hopping on short notice to make it happen.
Thank you for having us, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I have one last thing. I'm going to be tracking all players that left the Lakers from last year and tracking to see their performance after they left LeBron. Because the important thing to note is not how they play when he's on their team, as you pointed out. It's more important to see how they play after. I'm tracking those guys. I will be plotting graphs. I will be running the numbers, and we're going to figure this out.
Jeff, I'm going to ask you before we get off.
Can you unplug and plug your headphones back in, Cage? Because it sounds like you're talking to us from the roof.
Oh, my phone was dying.
There we go.
There we
go.
Because, you know, it's a long episode. It's a marathon episode. My headphones are back in. Can you hear me now from my headphones? They're back in. Okay, good. Lovely. No Amber alerts on my phone this time. So, my question. Do you think that LeBron has gotten better since high school? Or do you think it's fair to say that LeBron he hasn't improved his game at all since he came in the league?
Since high school?
Well, he came in the league from high school, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at his rookie year, he didn't even make the playoffs. And then in 2018, he took, in my opinion, a similarly talented bunch around him and took them to the NBA Finals. So, like, what's your definition of, like, better? Is it that he can jump higher? No. Is he a better overall basketball player? Is he smarter? Is he better at getting his teammates involved? Yes. It's just like if your definition of better is that he's winning more, then he's absolutely gotten better since his high school days.
Did he improve as a player? I think
my definition of getting better, and obviously like how much can Instagram really capture of like whole context, is an example of guys like Jordan and Kobe working with Olajuwon to develop post moves. It's guys working in the offseason to retool their jump shot, like Ben Simmons.
You know that LeBron worked with Hakeem as well, right? You know that, right? In Miami,
he did. I haven't seen the moves, so like to me, his game has become increasingly more limited. Like I don't think he shoots as well as he should.
By the way, I don't know.
No, this isn't an attack. I thought we were having a basketball combo.
He just said that he would have rather LeBron work on his game the way Ben Simmons does in the
offseason. Was a shot at Ben Simmons. That was a shot at Ben Simmons.
I did, yeah. The 76ers are trying to market Ben Simmons right now to get any trade value out of him possible.
He's terrible. He's terrible.
By pulling, it's going to work.
The Sixers are doing this move. Rich Paul did this. I don't know if you guys saw this. Kind of clever move, but it's ridiculous. He's saying Maxey and Ben Simmons aren't going to play for the Sixers because Ben Simmons isn't happy because both Maxey and Ben Simmons are agent is Rich Paul. Ridiculous. Dude, I love guys like Giannis who've come into the league and constantly have worked on their game. LeBron is the best athlete we've ever seen. Probably the best athlete the world's ever seen, honestly. But to me, he's fallen short in terms of improving the different parts of his games, the different parts of his game, the way other players did. But that's just my opinion. I never played basketball. I don't know shit. It's just my opinion, right? And that's where I stand because I admire guys like Kobe, Giannis, who have had to work on their game because they weren't as athletically gifted.
Giannis isn't as athletically gifted as LeBron. Are you insane? He's like 7 feet tall and he can like dunk without even jumping. I don't agree with that at all.
Josh, here's what I would say, right? Here's what I would say. So Joey Chestnut, he does not have to go and improve his eating style, right? Because he's the best at it anyway. He's going to eat more hot dogs. He doesn't have to go in the off season, right, and figure out a way to fix his jaw because he knows he's going to come in and he's going to eat as many hot dogs. That's LeBron. Like the other people have to figure out a way to beat him. Figure out a way. LeBron doesn't have to. He's the best.
I've seen Giannis's free throw percentage and shooting percentage stay completely stagnant, but he can still jump really high. So he's improved on like his jumping and dunking. I don't agree at all. I couldn't agree less with anything you're saying. LeBron is like the steadiest growth player I've ever seen. Like he's number 2 all time in PER. Kobe Bryant is 27. Do you follow advanced metrics? Basketball Reference.
I do.
LeBron is like number 2 in everything behind the great Michael Jordan, who's the only player. I will definitely say Michael Jordan is better than LeBron. But by
the way, you heard it here first. Also, I will say LeBron is number 2 to Michael Jordan. I'm not a bronze testicle like a lot of people out there are. That's the name, right? I say it wrong every time, but I'm gonna say it right now, bronze testicle. But yeah, he's the second best player. He's definitely the second best player I've ever seen, and I've been watching basketball for a while. I saw Dr. J play. I saw Kareem play. I saw Shaq, and I'm a Shaq homer. That was a guy I loved watching growing up. But LeBron's better than all those guys. LeBron, right now, the only thing Jordan had over him is Jordan just won. Jordan just had that extra gear that I don't think LeBron has in the finals that causes him to pass to Danny Green. But
we're under this illusion. We're under this illusion that extra gear is like born, right? It's this innate quality. But Tim Grover, the guy who's trained Jordan and Kobe, that extra gear comes from all of his work on his jump shot, all of his work on his game in the post. So that's my thing. LeBron is a freak athlete.
I think you're being ridiculous here. LeBron obviously works. You think he was born with salsa moves like he had in that commercial? You think he was born with the acting chops that he showed in Space Jam 2? He clearly works on his game. He
loves being the center of attention. I will agree with that.
Josh, I'll put you on the spot here. What do you think the Lakers do this year with him? You think the addition of Carmelo, Russell Westbrook, you think it's addition? You think it's subtraction? You think they're the favorites for winning a championship? What do you think?
I don't think they're going to win the championship. They're a little bit too old for me. Like they don't really have like the legs to get through all the things they need to get through. Like I'm not sure who's going to carry them in the middle of the season. I guess Westbrook could help on that front, but like a lot of their players are very inefficient. Westbrook, Carmelo, not exactly like spot up shooters that are going to play around. But I could be proven wrong with just like the amount of sheer talent that they have, and they could just kind of will themselves to a championship like they did a couple years ago. But their roster isn't my favorite of all time. I guess we'll see how it plays out. And LeBron's like 37 now, 38. I don't know how much more we can expect from that guy.
I call the Lakers Prism this year because they're the 2012 All-Star team, and plus Anthony Davis rookie. So that's basically the Lakers team.
Chris, real quick, your top 5 of all time.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't have a big enough frame of reference to pull in the older generations, man. But I have LeBron and Jordan in the top 5 for sure. And by the way, I do not have Kobe.
That's okay. Tim Duncan.
I'm just not. This is just like a guy at a barbershop firing off an opinion at this point because I am not a scholar of this in any way, shape, or form. Wow. But no, I don't have Tim Duncan. No, not my top 5, but I think Tim Duncan merits a top 10 appearance. I have Akeem in my top 10. I have Larry Bird, Magic Johnson in my top 10. But then I know that I need to leave space for Wilt, for Bill Russell, for Kareem. So, but I don't know where those guys fall. I didn't really watch those guys play.
I hope you guys enjoyed that extra like 9-minute rant about LeBron versus me.
Look at Josh. He's
You-
still angry. He's still
You know
mad.
how to
It's
get
not-
me.
that was the
it's
best
only
smile
thing
I've
that triggers
seen.
me.
I've never seen Josh have such a big smile.
Like PWC, LeBron is my PWCC or Beckett apparently.
There you go. There you go.
All right, guys.
All right. Thanks for having us, guys.